the Diocese of Lubbock, Texas. The story of the faith in this region began with Spanish missionaries, was sustained by faithful Catholic immigrants, and carries on today under the leadership of its current apostle, Bishop Robert M. Kerver.
As a priest, I think Jesus wants me to be an instrument of his love, of mercy and compassion. I think he'd want me to be face-to-face, occasionally issuing a challenging word, but doing so with love and with an end in sight.
This is the story of the bishops of America, the shepherds of the past and the shepherds of today, who through their callings and ministry carry the church into the future. It's also the story of their parish, their church, the Cathedral. This is The Chair, an exploration of what it means to be an apostle in America. In northeastern Texas, on the southern end of the High Plains, is the city of Lubbock, known as Hub City due to its economic and cultural importance to the region. It's also the sea city of the Diocese of Lubbock.
The regional differences within the state of Texas are enormous, and you have to be careful because Texas is a huge state. As Bishop of West Texas, I've come to appreciate what are today 3 demographic or socioeconomic realities in the state of Texas that address the issue of the differences. To me, there's 3 distinct churches in the state of Texas: the metropolitan or city church, the large city, the border experience, and then the rural experience.
The city of Lubbock, Texas, sits at the southern end of the High Plains. Now, this is a region known for its beauty. It's also an important agricultural center. Lubbock is a relatively young city. It's home to a major university. It's also the cultural and population center of the region. Lubbock County was formed in 1891. A new settlement with the same name was designated the county seat.
The settlers face challenging weather conditions, extreme heat, bitter cold. They're also very isolated communities, but because of their isolation, they serve as sort of pockets. Those on the outside, especially around the time of World War I, begin to look at these communities with great suspicion. Are you American? Or are your loyalties with the German government as well?
Greater Lubbock population growth around the turn of the century also included Catholics. Catholic immigrants from Europe and Mexico began to arrive, seeking opportunities in farming and fleeing unrest in their home countries. Masses were at first celebrated in the homes of townspeople until St. Francis Xavier Church, now called St. John's, was built in 1908. The following year, the railroad arrived to Lubbock, which had a tremendous impact on the city in the following decades.
What happens at the onset of World War II is many of the Catholics in the area, as well as others who their livelihoods relied on agriculture and other forms of working within the community, they were called into service to work in the factories during the war. So what happens is, because of the lack of people tilling the soil, many Mexican immigrants begin to move up into the area and take over in these particular jobs. It's known as the Bracero program. These immigrants eventually do, their families stay, and the community in the area continues to flourish well into the 20th and 21st century.
Parish growth continued throughout the 1930s and 1940s, but it accelerated more drastically in the 1950s with the arrival of more immigrants from Mexico. The number of faithful increased through the middle of the 20th century, so much so that in 1983, Pope John Paul II created the Diocese of Lubbock and appointed Michael Sheehan as its first bishop.
When Bishop Sheehan was installed and ordained, his main task for that 10 years he was here was actually forming the diocese, getting the diocesan structure, getting the people to feel as a unified body in a new diocese, and to work with his clergy. He started with very limited clergy. We had 40 parishes and 25 priests when the diocese was first formed.
And he's got a whole new vision. There's no question in my mind but that Bishop Michael J. Sheehan was the right bishop to be the founding bishop. His gifts, his skill set were ideally suited to taking a really, real mission. The churches and all that you see today are nothing like what they were in 1983. In 1983, we had a lot of little stucco buildings.
When Bishop Rodriguez got here, his main effort was toward getting the commitment of the Hispanic community to the diocese. The Hispanic community here are used to being laborers in the fields, and to get them to feel that they were equal with everybody else in the community was a major task, and he did an excellent job at it. And then, of course, Bishop Kerver came, and he came with the idea of, again, getting a different commitment from the diocese, the parishioner, that learning that they had a financial commitment, not just to their churches, but to the diocese. The church is bigger than just your church. You have the local church, which is the diocese, but then you also have the church in the world church. And to understand that they have a commitment not just to their parish, but to the diocese and also to Rome, to the Vatican. And of course, he's only been here 3 years, but he's made major steps in that direction. And I think a lot of the people are growing to that realization now. We have 25 counties in the diocese, 23,000 square miles, 137,000 self-identified Catholics, and 61 parishes in the diocese, predominantly Hispanic. Hearing babies cry at Mass is a beautiful sound, because that is our future. When you have a community that grows old around the church, then the church doesn't grow. It starts to wither. And to know that we've got young people coming here and young families coming here with babies, it makes you happy. It gives you joy. And we know the church is going to continue.
Center of liturgical prayer for the diocese is the Cathedral of Christ the King. The cathedral's origins lie in Lubbock's mid-century growth. In the 1950s, members of St. Elizabeth's Parish began to notice the need for another parish to serve the city's growing Catholic population. This new parish began as a grade school in 1958, followed by a high school in 1963. Mass was celebrated in the school gym until in 1968, the church building was dedicated. In 1984, Christ the King was named the Cathedral of the new diocese.
The church is probably twice the size it was from the original dedication as a cathedral. The altar was at the opposite end. It was at the south end of the church. And the church actually was on a decline. It went onto the altar so that everybody in the church could visualize the altar. And it sat between 500 and 600 people. Back in 1998, there was a major remodel under Bishop Placido's, and we actually turned it all around and put the altar at the north end of the church and put the entrance at the south end and added on the gathering space and increased the seating from about 550 to about 750.
When we think of a cathedral, we often think of it as being the most grand building, but that's not necessarily the case. What's important about it, it's the church that houses the cathedra, which is the seat of the bishop. It's the mother church of the diocese, from which he shepherds the flock. The most prominent piece of artwork in the cathedral is stained glass featuring Christ the King enthroned and teaching.
We did not have the skylight in the original church, and not only the skylight, but the placement of it right over the top of the altar. And even on a cloudy day, you still get light in there. And to come in here during the day with all the lights out and just see the light streaming down over the altar, it really catches your attention, and it brings you to a very worshipful space. This is the first major immersion pool that was in the diocese. We custom designed it for the cathedral. We wanted something where you could actually get a reenactment of your baptism. So that's why we placed the taller pool where you could baptize children, but also is a place when people come into the church, they can actually dip their fingers and bless themselves. That runs 24 hours a day. During the quiet times, you can hear the water running in the background, which is a beautiful idea.
What I think is most significant about a cathedral is it's the mother church of the diocese, and it is the bishop's church. It is the worship space that is the worship space of the people of that particular diocese.
The bishop's chair, or cathedra, symbolizes a bishop's role as the apostle of a particular diocese. The chair in Christ the King Cathedral symbolizes Bishop Coerver's authority as the apostle of Lubbock.
I grew up in Dallas, Texas. My parents were both born and raised in Dallas, Texas as well. I actually grew up 2 doors from our local parish church, the youngest of 4 children. The church was always a part of our family's life. When she was carrying me, my mother was president of the Mothers Club of the Catholic school there. My older siblings all graduated from the school, as did I. I graduated from St. Thomas Aquinas Grade School in Dallas in 1968. And I think that the proximity of our house, 2 doors from the church, contributed very significantly to my vocation. When did I start thinking I want to be a priest is always an interesting topic. As long as I can remember, because for my 6th birthday, my mother had 2 unmarried sisters, and they had a friend of theirs who was a seamstress. She sewed me a set of green vestments. I found those vestments when I was making the move to Lubbock back in 2016. Of course, they come to about here on me now, and I can't get it over my head, but I always wanted to be a priest. Then in high school, I went to Jesuit college prep, and I began to get interested in other things. And my interest began to wane until the good Jesuits sent us on a retreat our senior year, which is the tradition of the high school there. And the full moon rose over a lake, and it was just one of those nature experiences where I thought God was speaking to me. And I was trying to discern whether to accept a 4-year scholarship to the University of St. Thomas in Houston, where my sisters had graduated from, or to give the seminary a try. And when that full moon rose over the lake, I knew I had to give seminary a try.
Bishop Kerver earned a bachelor's degree in philosophy from the University of Dallas, a licentiate in spiritual theology from the Pontifical Gregorian University in Rome, and a master's degree in counseling and guidance from Texas A&M.
Both seminary experiences I loved. They were 2 very different seminary experiences, Holy Trinity Seminary in Dallas and the North American College in Rome. At that time, the North American College did not have a strong formation program. You did well if you were a self-starter, if you took preparation for priesthood seriously, and I tried to do that. And I'm fond of saying that the North American College gently took the cassock off of me thread by thread. Middle of my 2nd year, I felt like I was sort of a new man. I was ordained a priest in my home parish because in 1980, it was before the cathedral had really achieved its prominence in our post-Vatican II theology. So in those days, it was thought that it was best to ordain men in their home parish. And because I went to the North American College, the academic year runs a little bit later. I was ordained on June 27th. And so I was ordained alone in my home parish.
After ordination, Bishop Kerver went on to serve as a priest in a variety of roles, including parish priest and the director of spiritual formation at Holy Trinity Seminary at the University of Dallas. In September 2016, Bishop Kerver was appointed by Pope Francis as the 3rd Bishop of Lubbock, Texas.
When I got the call from the nunciature, I had decided some months before to take a few days off. In the middle of September, I had looked ahead at my calendar, and I saw that I like to get away for a few days, like Monday through Thursday kind of thing. So I was in the Pacific time zone, and because I was in the Pacific time zone, my phone rang at 6:45 in the morning. And I saw that it was a 202 number, and that's where Father Chris was working for the Archdiocese of the Military. And so when I saw this number coming from a 202 area code, I picked up the phone and I said, "Must be Chris. Hello?" And then this Italian accent came on the phone because the nuncio didn't call me. His number 2 man called me because the nuncio was in Rome at the time. "Monsignor Kerver, this is Monsignor Walter Irby from the Apostolic Nunciature. Can you talk?" He said, "Monsignor, our Holy Father Pope Francis has appointed you Bishop of Lubbock." And at that point, I was struck dumb. Call me Zechariah. And my entire life flashed in front of me. When I finally gained my composure, because I was speechless, and I said, well, what's next? "Well, Monsignor, I must ask if you accept." I've always gone where I was sent. I've since regretted, after talking to other guys and how they responded to the call, I said, well, of course I accept. You know what I did after the phone call? Crawled back in bed and wept for about an hour. Just as dumbstruck as I am right now. What stands out in my mind from that Episcopal ordination, and here I am looking back at the narthex, seeing all these people dressed up, getting out of cars several blocks away, and down the street I could see some police cars, and oh boy, I'm experiencing it again right now. Just my heart sort of stopping and saying, this is from my ordination as bishop. I don't remember too much once I entered the church. What I do remember was when I got to my place on the altar, and as soon as I got in place, one of my current favorite hymns, "O God Beyond All Praising," was begun. I've got goosebumps now remembering it. Was begun with trumpet and with brass and timpani, and I remember singing that, belting that song out with tears in my eyes, of course.
In the years since becoming bishop, Bishop Kerver has worked hard to live out his apostolic mission to govern, to teach, and to sanctify his people.
I'd like to talk very briefly about my coat of arms. The right side is the Diocese of Lubbock, the cotton bow, the caprock, the Christ the King, and the red and black of Texas Tech Red Raiders, okay? The other side is my coat of arms. There's a statue of St. Joseph, and I didn't realize how many statues of St. Joseph have the carpenter square in it, and that's because of the woodworking background in my family. The green is my 7/8 Irish heritage, the green field. The diagonal is reminiscent of the Diocese of Dallas coat of arms and the Trinity River, and so that was me paying homage to my background as a priest of Dallas. The Dallas coat of arms has 3 fleur-de-lis in it. I've got 3 roses because of the significance of roses to St. Rita, which is the parish that I came from. And then there's blue representing Our Lady of the Lake Parish in Rockwall, a suburb of Dallas, which was my first pastorate. And then the red key row in the white field, that's directly from my priesthood ordination invitations and holy cards. Suscipe Domine. Take, Lord, receive. My favorite prayer is the prayer of self-offering of St. Ignatius of Loyola. Take, Lord, receive. I've prayed that prayer after every Mass since I was ordained a priest for almost 40 years now. After communion at every Mass. Pray it silently. When Pope Francis tells us to smell like the sheep, I think he's trying to encourage us to be engaged with our people, to share in their life, to know their joys and struggles, to be willing to get our hands dirty with them, not to sit on a throne. That's the one thing that disappoints me about my chair, is it's pretty far removed from the people. As a priest, I think Jesus wants me to be an instrument of his love for other people. I think he wants me to be an instrument of mercy and compassion. I think he'd want me to be face-to-face, occasionally issuing a challenging word, but doing so with love and with an end in sight.